welcome into Fantasy Baseball today on Monday, September 9th. I am Frank Stampfl, joined by Scott White and Chris Towers. Today on the show, we have all the waiver wire moves, starter sit decisions. Jared Jones made some big changes to his arsenal. I received a strategy question that I thought was really interesting, so I will present it to you guys, and much more. But let's get into the players of the weekend.
Not hearing anything.
No, nothing came through there?
I think we're having some technical difficulties here, Frank.
Are you hearing anything from me?
You don't sound great. I don't think your mic settings are correct. We're off to a bad start.
All right, how about now? Do I sound better?
Yes, much
great.
better. That's much better. Yes.
Okay, so here's what we're going to do. On the YouTube side, we're just going to start this thing over like nothing ever happened. And on the audio side, no one will ever know that this happened. So let's take it over. Hello, and welcome into Fantasy Baseball today on Monday, September 9th. I am Frank Stampfl, joined by Scott White and Chris Towers. Today on the show, we have all the waiver wire moves, start or sit decisions. Jared Jones made some big changes to his arsenal. I received a strategy question I thought was really interesting, and much more. But let's get into our players of the weekend.
Oh my goodness! Unbelievable!
All right, how was that? Did I do all right?
It worked.
Sounded great.
All right, let's start with...
Now on the audio side, they have no idea why you asked that.
First time that we've recorded the start of this podcast, nothing has ever gone wrong.
All right, Chris, let's stick with you. Player of the weekend.
Jared Jones, who had his best start in quite a while, and I think it was a really, really interesting start. He went 7 innings, he gave up 2 earned runs, 9 strikeouts against the Washington Nationals, 15 whiffs on 92 pitches, including 7 on his curveball. That's new. I don't know if Jared Jones had thrown more than 7 curveballs in a start before this one. Technically, his season high curveball usage before this, I believe it was 11.5%, but it was 34% in this, 32% in this one. And he got the 7 whiffs, 52% CSW rate is elite. That is a really interesting sign for a guy who has been one of the more extreme 2-pitch pitchers in baseball. You know, for the most part this season, the curveball's been used around 5 to 7% of the time. Not much different for the changeup, both right around 7% of the time. But in this one, he throws the curveball 32% of the time. The velocity was also up significantly on the curveball, which makes me think that he's made some changes to that as well. Velocity was up across the board, but especially with the curveball. And one thing I did look into, and it doesn't seem to be the explanation here, but I thought maybe it was a situation where, they're lumping some sliders in as curveballs. That seems really unlikely. His lowest slider was 88.5. His fastest curveball was 85.5. Clearly distinct pitches. And so a conscious change on Jared Jones's part. And I think that's potentially really significant because we're talking about a guy who early on in the season looked like one of the best pitchers in baseball. We were talking about him as a potential fantasy ace after the first month or so, and then he ran out of steam. He wasn't terrible before the injury up until the last couple of starts, but he wasn't quite as dominant, and clearly something needed to change, and maybe the curveball can be part of the answer for Jared Jones. At the very least, it makes him, I think, one of the most interesting pitchers to watch between now and the end of the season. I think in the leagues that are still playing, you just start Jared Jones. I'm pretty comfortable with that. But how the final month goes, final 3 weeks, and how that curveball looks especially, I think is going to be one of the key things to watch moving forward, because we know Jared Jones' ceiling is ace level. It's a question of whether he can get back to that, and I think it's probably more likely if he has a very good third pitch to go along with a very good fastball and a very good slider. So really fascinated to watch Jared Jones from here on out.
Throughout that analysis, Chris, you said just start Jared Jones this upcoming week. He's only 54% started on CBS, so people had some trepidation this past week. That was even with a 2-start week.
They should have listened to me. I said go ahead and start him,
despite
the poor return. Yeah.
Well, Scott, are you good with starting Jared Jones this upcoming week against Kansas City? Pretty tough offense.
Yeah, I'm good with it. It's not automatic. If you've got a loaded pitching staff, which most of the people still listening, they probably have good teams, then you might have a better option, but I would be fine starting Jones with that matchup.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's totally fine as well. Awesome start here. Big whiffs, curveball velocity being up for Jared Jones. And as Chris mentioned, let's see how he finishes out his season. Scott, over to you, your player of the weekend.
All right, so I feel like we're leaving some breadsticks on the table here because I'm also going with a pitcher who probably wasn't the biggest standout from the weekend, but Sean
Frank needs to carbo load.
Yeah, for sure. Sean Manaea against the Reds Friday kept doing what he's been doing. Well, I guess he allowed 4 earned runs in 6 2/3 innings, so that's probably a little disappointing. But he got the 9 strikeouts. He got the 19 swinging strikes. He continued to be this big-time bat misser that we're not used to seeing. And now in his last 8 starts, Sean Manaea has a 2.35 ERA, a .78 WHIP, and 10.9 K per 9. That's an 8 starts. That's the sample's getting pretty significant here. And after his last start, I said, okay, clearly the analysis was basically clearly he's missing a lot of bats now. He's performing well. You ride it out for as long as it lasts. I wish I could explain it beyond that, but I haven't seen anything that would really explain it. Well, now I have, because an article was written by Tim Britton of The Athletic, who went into great detail describing what changed for Sean Manaea during this 8-start stretch. And it's an interesting read if you have access to it. But basically, on July 25th, the Mets were facing the Braves. Chris Sale on the mound. He was dominating. Sean Manaea saw the way he threw the ball and said, I think I can do that. He decided to just copy Chris Sale's low release point. And since that day, since July 25th, that signals the 8-start stretch. He did drop the release point on the fastball. It's played up. You can see him getting a ton of whiffs on that pitch now. So that was the biggest change for Sean Manaea. But then during this 8-start stretch, there was one big misstep. I believe it was it was on August 10th. One big misstep for Sean Manaea. And since that start, he began incorporating a changeup more with the new grip. And so the changeup's become an effective pitch. It was responsible in this latest start for 6 of the 19 swinging strikes. So between that lower release point making his fastball more effective and that new changeup grip giving him an effective changeup, Sean Manaea is like a completely different pitcher now. And the results are pretty impressive. And it may be something he can sustain even into next year. We'll see how he closes out this season. But he's I hesitate to call him must start, but he's not far off.
Yeah, I'll admit I didn't notice the drop in release point, but what I'm seeing is it was more. So you said it was July 15th,
July 20. Where I lost the
24th,
okay. 25th was the day Chris Sale started.
Okay, so yeah, the big drop comes on July 30th, and it's actually on his fastball been getting lower since then. But yeah, he dropped his arm angle, his release point about 1/4 of an inch on that day. And if you include the most recent start, he's down about 1/2 an inch, or maybe 1/3 of an inch. So that's something I hadn't seen. And obviously that is a tangible change that Sean Manaea has made. So that's interesting. I don't know from a long-term perspective what to make of it. When we're looking at 2025, because the thing I always come back to with Sean Manaea is we've seen stretches like this before, not perfectly analogous, but he had a stretch of 15 starts in 2021 where he had a 2.83 ERA and 104 strikeouts in 89 innings. Mm-hmm. That's a half season of borderline ace level production. And, ultimately he ends the season with a 3.91 ERA. So things clearly went south from that point on, but that's interesting. I'm inclined to think of Sean Manaea next season more or less how I did before this stretch, but that makes me rethink it a little bit.
Yeah, no, exactly. Because this is, if a new delivery is transformative, and if it's a new delivery that makes his fastball more effective, that makes it a swing and miss pitch, that is the most valuable thing a pitcher can do for himself, miss bats on his fastball. And I'm not sure he's had that before. And, he'll have to stick with it. It'll have to remain effective for him to stick with it. But if he does, then I don't know that he's the same guy anymore. And that obviously opens the possibility for him being a much better fantasy option.
I do agree that Sean Manaea is not a must-start pitcher. He's 73% started on CBS. He's at Toronto this week. They are 26th in WOBA against lefties.
You're probably starting him out there, yeah. Keep him
totally fine using him there, yeah. And he has RP eligibility too. So if you play in a points league, it's a nice little cheat code there for you using Sean Manaea this week against the Blue Jays. All right, you guys saved the carbs, the breadsticks for me. I'm going to go ahead and let's talk about Connor Norby. Just another huge weekend. The guy has been raking for the Marlins recently, 2 for 5 with his 6th home run on Saturday, and then 2 for 4 with a double dong, 4 RBI on Sunday. All 3 home runs this weekend, over 400 feet for Connor Norby in 18 games with the Marlins. He's batting .329. He's got 6 homers, 18 runs scored, 2 steals. You dig a little bit deeper, and it's not the most impressive. 84.5 average exit velocity, 29% strikeout rate. He is pulling the ball a lot, a 52% pull rate during that span. And as we've said, for many hitters who don't really profile as power hitters, that is a way you can kind of cheat the system there, is by pulling the ball. But
only 2 of his home runs are to the pull side this season. That's the weird thing, is when Connor Norby got traded to the Marlins, my first thought was, well, it's mediocre quality of contact metrics, but does seem like the kind of guy who might be able to just kind of consistently pull that, Isaac Paredes or Nolan Arenado trick and just hit a bunch of pull side home runs. And Miami's not a great park, but it's better than Baltimore for that. And here we are. He has 6 home runs on the season. 4 of them are to 6 home runs on the season with the Marlins. 4 of them are to right field.
But his longest home run this weekend was to the opposite field. He hit one 435 feet to right center. So if not every player these days can hit the ball that far to the opposite field. And it's even stranger coming from Connor Norby, whose exit velocity readings on the whole aren't that impressive, but he's shown the capability of doing that. I believe his second longest home run this weekend was also to the opposite field, the 418 footer on Sunday. I believe it was. I think it was just the 401, that dinky 401 foot home run he hit Sunday that he pulled. And so I'm less worried for Norby about the exit velocities now than about the strikeout rate. He's going to have to get that down, and I'm not confident he will, because even at AAA this year it was above 28%. But I'll tell you this much. The Marlins, and we talked about this on Friday's show, the Marlins have the 5th best hitter matchups, and even more significantly, 5 lefties on the schedule.
Yeah.
Norby murdered lefties at AAA this year. So I think I'm not going to call him a must start, but he's as close as a guy who's rostered in 40% of leagues can be.
Yeah. Sorry, Jesus Sanchez this week, unfortunately.
53% rostered for Connor Norby. So still widely available out there. The underlying plate discipline is pretty scary. Zone contact is bad. Chases lots of pitches. 18.5% swinging strike rate. What we're telling you is that the underlying numbers do not really back up everything that Connor Norby is doing right now, but he is hot. He's one of the hottest hitters in baseball right now. So, with the dual position eligibility, second base, third base, you can plug him in wherever you see fit. I say just ride it out as long as he's hot. Maybe it's a Zach Geloff situation from last year where he just stays hot the rest of the season, and then, okay, maybe he takes a step back next year. But yeah, as long as he's this hot, I think Connor Norby needs to be rostered in more than 53% of leagues. What about Connor Norby versus the other breadstick, Spencer Horwitz, who had had a big weekend as well, 4 for 5 with a double dong on Saturday, 2 for 2 with his 12th home run on Sunday. He actually only started 1 of 3 games this weekend, and he's been really bad against lefties. But over his last 28 games, Horwitz is batting .290. He's got 8 home runs. He's hitting the ball in the air more. He's pulling it as well. The barrel rate, 12.2%. During that span. So I think he's doing some good things as well. I like what we've seen here. Scott, who do you like more, Connor Norby or Spencer Horwitz?
Well, for next week, it's Norby.
Mm-hmm.
Long term, it might be Horwitz. And I actually did add Horwitz to the sleeper hitters for next week, too. Lower on the list than Norby. But after this big weekend performance, the Blue Jays do have 2 lefties on the schedule, but the 4 righties are pretty mashable. And what Horwitz did this weekend was impressive. I didn't watch that Saturday game, but I heard that a couple balls were hit off the wall in addition to the 2 home runs. And then he had some long foul balls in the game Sunday where he came off the bench and hit a home run and a single. And the 2 home runs he hit Saturday were both over 420 feet. So kind of like Norby, this is not a guy who we think of having a lot of raw power. But Horwitz showed he can hit the ball a long way when he gets a hold of one. And he had something to say after that game Saturday that I thought was worth bringing up. He gave credit to assistant hitting coach Matt Haig. He said, "We're doing drills working on my tightness to make sure I can pull the ball the right way. It showed today." I don't see anything that's changed in like the pull rates for Horwitz or anything, but like there's more data that can probably be dug into there that might explain him maximizing his like spray angle for power. He said the sort of thing that we like to hear hitters say is the bottom line. And I think he's a pretty impressive hitter if he can learn to hit lefties at least adequately.
Mm-hmm. Again, that was Spencer Horwitz. We are taking Connor Norby over Horwitz for this week, but 2 names that are pretty hot right now. And Horwitz could be out there in slightly deeper leagues too. He's less than 30% rostered on CBS. Big thanks to everyone for watching live. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, youtube.com/fantasybaseball today. And if you enjoy the audio podcast, feel free to leave us a 5-star rating and review on both Apple or Spotify. We really do appreciate it. Let's take our first break. When we return, we'll hit the news and notes right after this.
At CBS Sports Golazo Network, we're bringing you the game.
Madness of Messi arrives!
Breaking down the game.
This is unlike anything else in the world.
And changing the game.
Get it all for nil.
That means free.
Whoa.
And all day long!
24/7.
Welcome back in news and notes. Kyle Tucker made his long-awaited return to the Astros this weekend. He started 2 games. He went 1 for 4 with 2 runs and an RBI. Are you guys good to use Kyle Tucker this week?
I hardly care anymore. He took too long. I'm over it. Thanks for nothing, Kyle Tucker. But obviously you have to activate him now.
Okay.
He didn't play in the outfield yet, right?
I don't
DH both games?
believe so,
Okay.
no.
Apparently that's made Yordan Alvarez very mad, and he's hulking out right now. So that's good news.
He's what?
He's hulking out.
Oh, hulking out. I thought you said holding out. I'm like, what is it, football?
No, he's hulking out.
Holding
He's been
out?
hulking out for months.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah. He's having a monster second half, Alvarez. Ketel Marte also returned on Friday. He was back at leadoff, so another name you could get in your lineups. Tyler Glasnow threw a 25-pitch bullpen on Saturday, his first time throwing off a mound since landing on the IL. Jackson Merrill fouled the ball off of his knee Friday. He was out of the lineup Saturday and then returned on Sunday. X-rays came back negative, and I guess he's fine because he homered on Sunday.
although maybe sit this week
Jackson
along
Merrill.
with everyone on the Padres, unfortunately.
Why is that?
They only play 5 games, right?
Yeah, they do have the worst matchups, 5
Yeah.
games, and couple of them are against the Mariners pitching staff. So, I mean, you're probably still starting him in most leagues, but
He's so good.
I think I'm going to go Xavier Edwards over him in a points league.
yeah, I mean, Xavier Edwards is basically must start too, I think. So in shallower leagues that don't have the extra outfielders and middle infield spot, I could see Jackson Merrill getting squeezed out, but most people are probably still going to use him.
Yeah, I think so too. Teoscar Hernandez was hit in the foot by a pitch on Friday and then left the game immediately. He also missed Saturday and Sunday. X-rays came back negative. He's hoping to return on Monday. Luis Castillo left Sunday's start with a left hamstring strain and will undergo an MRI on Monday. Alec Boehm was placed in the IL with a left hand strain, retroactive to September 3rd. In the shallowest of leagues, just check for any of Eugenio Suarez, Mark Vientos, or Junior Caminero. They're all between 79 and 85% rostered on CBS. If those names are gone, Connor Norby, who we spoke about, does have third base eligibility. He's 55% rostered. Michael Busch, if you're just looking for a matchup play for this week, he has some games in Coors Field, 66% rostered. And then some names further down the list, Brooks Lee, 30%, and Jose Tena, 10%. Again, those are some Alec Boehm replacements. Bo Bichette will begin a rehab assignment at AAA on Tuesday. He's been out since mid-July with a right calf strain. Gavin Stone was placed in the IL due to right shoulder inflammation, and Dodgers president of baseball operations, Andrew Friedman, was asked about all of the injuries to Dodgers pitchers this season, and he said, quote, "It's been a really challenging year on that front and something that we're going to need to spend a lot of time on this winter to really dig in on." He also mentioned reimagining their pitching development this offseason.
I feel so bad for the Dodgers.
All right. I thought it was interesting that,
No, it's okay. That's fine.
All right,
It's,
all right, Scott. We all feel real bad for the Braves.
I'm not even like saying that necessarily from a Braves fan perspective, just from a baseball fan. Like, there's few organizations that I have, the Dodgers get whatever they want, basically. Mm-hmm. And I imagine the way they'll dig into it this offseason is by signing 3 really good pitchers.
And they're getting Ohtani back as a pitcher next season. How about that? Jeffrey Springs was placed on the IL with left elbow fatigue, retroactive to September 5th. He was returning from Tommy John surgery this season. Are you guys okay dropping Jeffrey Springs?
Yeah, I think
a bunch of leagues are done this week or next week, so he's not going to be back for either of those.
Yeah, I know there are some roto leagues that are still out there, and NFBC, there's no IL spot, so leagues like that. I think.
Best case scenario there, you got him back for the final 8 days of the season.
Yeah.
So maybe 2 starts at best, but probably not.
Jeffrey Springs, okay to drop. Brandon Lau missed Friday and Saturday due to right middle finger inflammation. Was he in the lineup on Sunday? Brandon Lau. Let's
I don't think so.
Quickly check that. He was not in the lineup, did not play this weekend. So he is a name to monitor here on Monday. Jonathan India was removed from Sunday's game due to left elbow discomfort. Calvin Fauché was placed on the IL with a right shoulder impingement, retroactive to September 5th. Chris, who is next up for saves on your beloved Miami Marlins?
Well, the way this weekend went, it may not matter. They put up 9 runs in consecutive games. Break up the Marlins. I don't have a strong read. Maybe Anthony Bender if they think he's, fine coming off the injury.
I think this is like the 3rd time this year that we've touted Anthony Bender as probably being next in line.
I just don't know who else it would even be. Like you look at the names on their active roster and it's like Declan Cronin,
John McMillan. That's the guy.
Yeah. Darren McCoffin. I think that's, I don't know.
You don't even know how to pronounce them.
Yeah.
And you're a Marlins fan.
Yeah. It's probably nobody.
Chris, didn't we see Declan Cronin pitch in spring training?
We did.
Down in Florida?
That was we saw him in that spring training game, and I had literally never heard of him before that. So, yeah.
Yeah. All right. So these are just names for deeper NL only leagues. I think I would put John McMillan at the top of the list, but yeah, there's a chance they go with Anthony Bender, or maybe they just don't have a save opportunity for the rest of the season.
I mean, if you're that desperate for saves, and I'm sure we'll get to the bullpen section later where there are better options, but Victor Vodnik just got activated from the IL. I think I'd rather have him, and I'm sure he's available almost everywhere. I think I'd rather have him than speculate on anybody in the Marlins bullpen.
JT Realmuto left Friday's game after fouling a ball off of his knee, was not in the lineup on Saturday. Another name here. Let's, I took these notes on Saturday and then I didn't update them on Sunday. What a bad job by me. JT Realmuto, he was not in the lineup Sunday either. So another name
That's
to
a little concerning given the knee surgery.
Yep. Trevor Story made his return this weekend. He started both Saturday and Sunday, and he picked up a hit in each. Any interest in Trevor Story, who is 21% roster?
Only in Roto, but he's still had like 19 homers and 26 steals, I think, in 143 games since joining the Red Sox, if those numbers are accurate. I wrote about it earlier today, so those numbers should be fairly accurate.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a 230 something batting average, so I'm not super excited, but yeah, I still think there's a chance Trevor Story can be helpful.
All right, we got to do the contextualization thing. Rank Norby, Story, and Horwitz.
I would put Story at the bottom of the list.
Yeah, Norby, Horwitz, Story.
Yeah.
I agree, but if we're not taking the matchups next week into account, I think it's probably closer than you're making it sound.
Mm-hmm.
All right, team name for anyone who picks up both Horwitz and Story. American Horwitz Story. Boom.
Oh.
Pretty good. Do you watch the show?
Never watched it.
I watched it for a long time, but then I don't know, they really started getting wacky, so I fell off, but I don't know, maybe I'll jump back in. Spooky
It's still
season.
going on?
I think so.
Yeah.
I would just say check for Trevor Story in like deeper Roto leagues because he was available in all of my 15-team Roto leagues, so
It was supposed to be out for the year.
Yeah, exactly why.
Kind of crazy.
Just check on Trevor Story in those deeper leagues. Tanner Houck's next start was pushed back to Friday, which means he won't be a 2-star pitcher this week, as we originally anticipated. Jordan Romano has been ruled out for the rest of the season. Chad Green will remain the Blue Jays closer. I think he's blown 3 saves in a row, but not really sure where else they would go. Jeff McNeil is out for the season with a fractured right wrist. Jose Iglesias started at second base. And Jose Soriano will not return this season. He went on the IL August 17th with arm fatigue.
I will say I saw one report that the Mets are considering giving Luis Angel Acuna probably a look, but that's just something to keep an eye on over the next couple of days, perhaps.
He's been pretty bad in the minors this year. Ronald Acuna's younger brother. So yeah. I think that's the most interesting thing about him as a prospect. He's shorter. He's not nearly as powerful.
But
he's speedy.
He was a top 100 guy entering the season.
I don't think he will be next season. But yeah, he was entering this season.
Other names who went on the IL this weekend: Kyle Harrison with left shoulder inflammation, Max Meyer with right shoulder bursitis, Derek Hill with a left shoulder impingement, Joe Adell with a left oblique strain, Kevin Pillar with a strained left thumb, and Henry Davis with left hand inflammation. One prospect update: Tigers' top pitching prospect Jackson Jobe was promoted to AAA in 16 starts at AA. He had a 1.95 ERA, 1.09 WHIP. Uncharacteristically bad control this season for Jackson Jobe, which has never really been an issue at any other levels. But he's 22 years old. Chances you think he's up on opening day for the Tigers?
Opening day?
Yeah.
49.5%.
Sure. I was going to I thought 50 and then I thought 40. So I'll say 45.
45%. There you go, Jackson Jobe. And I did get a strategy question on Twitter Sunday, and it got me thinking a little bit. I think mostly for people in shallow leagues, maybe head-to-head playoff formats. How would you approach the playoff run with year-long busts like Matt Olson and Marcus Semien? Would you drop them and go with the hot hand, or would you just keep them in your lineup? And I think it's kind of an interesting question this time.
I haven't looked at it super recently, but Olson's been better the past couple of months, right?
He has.
Yeah, he hasn't been quite himself. He's hitting 237 with 12 homers in the second half. But like that's a 45 homer pace with a bunch of RBIs. So I think if I got to this point with both of those guys and I dropped them now, I feel like I would feel worse if they went off. So I don't think I would do it. I will say, like, I expected Simeon to turn it on, and he did in July. And he's been miserable on August and the week of September so far. So that's been disappointing.
Yeah, I mean, Simeon is batting .238 with a .695 OPS on the season. That's a pretty bad player.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's still giving you lots of volume. He leads off for the Rangers.
Yeah, I think in a points league, I'm probably sticking with him. Like, I don't know. Connor Norby's been so good. Maybe I would consider that, but like,
I might
not for Horwitz.
Band-Aid.
Yeah, not for Horwitz, who's not playing every day.
But I want to drop Simeon.
Yeah.
Even if I was picking up Norby to start over him this week, because I hate the idea of, you giving, you stick with him all season and then he goes off against you. I'd like to protect that from happening, prevent it.
So maybe it's not you drop these players, but if you have the bench spots and you could afford to just keep those guys on the bench and you could start someone else who's hotter right now, again, like a Connor Norby, who's been much better than Marcus Semien recently. I do think that's a perfectly fine route to go down. Let's talk about some other waiver wire hitters. And Dylan Cruz had a big doubleheader on Saturday, 2 for 6 with a sock and 2 shoes across 2 games and 12 games so far with the Nats. The batting average is lower, 217, but he's got 3 homers, 5 steals, a 780 OPS. He's 72% rostered. We've talked a lot about Dylan Cruz, but clearly he's still out there in some shallower formats, maybe some 3 outfielder leagues. Who would you guys rather add, Dylan Cruz or Pete Crow Armstrong?
Well, only one's a sleeper hitter for this week, and it's Pete Crow Armstrong. I do think Dylan Cruz's ceiling is higher, and I'm pretty confident I'll be drafting him earlier next season, but we're playing it week to week right now. So I'm going Crow Armstrong.
I would go with Cruz, who, like, the one thing I was going to say is, like, well, Pete Crow Armstrong at least has the edge and speed, but not actually sure that's true. Cruz been running a lot. He's got 5 steals in 12 games. Crow Armstrong, it's like 7 and 43 or something, whatever the pace is. So, like, he's been good. I think Cruz is a better hitter, so I would go with him.
All right, I've got to break the tie. I'm going with PCA. What about Dylan Cruz or Taylor Ward, who's been pretty hot recently?
Cruz.
And Dylan Cruz or JJ Bleday?
Cruz.
Okay. We obviously spoke a lot about Connor Norby. Did just want to ask if you would drop any of these players for him. Would you drop a Ryan McMahon?
Yes.
Yep.
What about Jackson Holiday?
I think so.
I don't have it ranked that way.
But...
I don't have it ranked that way yet, but I think I'm just going to do that. Yeah.
What about Gleyber Torres?
Yeah.
Oh gosh, if we start, I would happily drop Gleyber Torres for Connor Norby
and Isaac Paredes, who's been pretty bad with the Cubs.
Boy, we talk a lot about a win-win trade. Morel for Paredes looks like a lose-lose trade right now. Both those guys have just been dreadful. Yeah. I'm perfectly fine dropping Paredes for Norby.
What's especially confusing about the Paredes deal, I mean, it seemed obviously like a bad venue shift for him, as we talked about at the time. But he's under control for several more years. They seemingly have found their long-term first baseman in Michael Busch. They got, their top prospect is a third baseman, Matt Shaw. He should be up at some point next year, if not before the end of this season. And what are they going to do with Paredes at that point?
I think they could flip someone like Nico Horner this offseason.
I've thought about that. I've thought about even Dansby Swanson and move, because Horner was a good shortstop before they signed Swanson and moved him to second base.
Yeah, it is a possibility. Paredes, by the way, batting 162 with a 556 OPS so far with the Chicago Cubs. The fly ball rate way down for Isaac Paredes since joining them. Back over to Spencer Horwitz. I wanted to compare him to some other players at his position. Would you rather add Horwitz or Kyle Manzardo?
Horwitz.
I would much rather add Horwitz. I removed Manzardo from the sleeper hitters for next week because at least Sunday he was out of the lineup against a righty.
What about Horwitz versus Ty France, who's hit very well since joining the Reds.
Horwitz.
I think I would go with France, especially in a points league, just because I think he's going to play more.
Yeah, that one's close. I think I would go with Ty France as well. What about Spencer Horwitz versus Geraldo Perdomo, who's another name, over the past month or so, he's hit really well for Arizona.
Unless I absolutely only need speed, I would go with Horwitz.
Yeah, I don't buy the Perdomo thing at all, so I agree.
Okay. What about Horwitz versus his teammate Will Wagner? Ooh, I know you like both, Scott.
Well, Horwitz. I mean, he's playing more regularly than Wagner, at least, and producing more than Wagner.
Yeah. Joey Bart is back. He returned this weekend, 1 for 4 with his 13th home run on Sunday. He's had a very fine season, 271 batting average, 848 OPS in 66 games with the Pirates. He's 26% rostered. How would you guys rank Shea Langoliers, Austin Wells, and Joey Bart? One catcher leagues.
I'd go Bart, Langoliers, Wells.
I'll flip the top two. Langoliers, Bart, then Wells.
Okay. Some names in deeper leagues. Johnny DeLuca, who I mentioned recently, continues to hit. He had a big weekend, last 18 games, 338 batting average, 3 home runs, 7 steals. He's only 4% rostered. Otto Lopez, who plays for the Marlins, has been hitting well. Last 33 games, he's batting .297, providing some speed. He has 8 steals during that time. Grant McCray has been doing some things for the Giants, 2 for 4 with a double dong, 5 RBI on Saturday, and he has started 20 of the past 22 games for them. He had over 50 steals in the minors last year, so it's just kind of an interesting profile there. Trey Sweeney had a huge game on Sunday for the Tigers, 4 for 4 with a sock and a shoe, and Pavin Smith had a huge game on Sunday Night Baseball, a truly massive game, 3 for 4 with a triple dong. He had 8 RBI, but he barely plays. He's only started 5 of the past 16 games.
You remember, it was the start of last season, I think. Pavin Smith had like 10 RBI in the first 7 games or something. And I distinctly remember should we take Pavin Smith? And no, of course we shouldn't take Pavin Smith seriously. No, he's like a part-time player. So I think he's easy enough to write off. DeLuca, 4% rostered is probably too low. Like, he's got an interesting minor league track record. He's got a lot of speed, and he's playing pretty regularly. So I think 4% roster is too low for him. He's worth a look in any 15-team roto league where you need speed down the stretch. The rest of this group is pretty uninspiring.
I agree DeLuca needs to be rostered in 4% because 4% is essentially 0%. But
it's 4
I'm unenthusiastic about him overall because it feels like a fool me twice, shame on me situation. Remember when he first got called up, he was delivering and we got really excited. And, even during this stretch where DeLuca has been productive, his average exit velocity is like 87 miles per hour. So I'm just not.
Yeah, I don't think the power is anything remarkable.
Yeah.
I think it's more of a speed play than anything.
And I might prefer Grant McCray for that, to be honest. I don't think they're that far apart. Obviously, DeLuca's the hotter hand.
Grant McCray, by the way, he's played 20 games with the Giants, batting .243 with 5 homers, 3 steals, and 803 OPS, striking out an ungodly 42% of the time. But, man, he is hitting the ball hard, 93.6 average exit velocity, 18% barrel rate. So, you could get some sneaky power and speed in deeper 5 outfielder leagues. Again, the name there is Grant McCray. Let's take our final break, and when we return, we'll hit the waiver wire pitchers from the weekend right after this.
There are some things in life that you can't quite explain.
An extraordinary story.
Maybe it sounds flawless, looks effortless, or makes you feel like a part of history.
The first ever goal for BFC.
And when all of those phenomenons come together, it's perfect. Pitch perfect.
Welcome back in. Waiver Wire Pitchers Part 1. And the first group includes Tobias Myers, who had 11 strikeouts against the Rockies this weekend. Jamison Tyone, who had a quality start up against the Yankees. Shane Baz, who also had a quality start at the Orioles. and Clark Schmidt, who pitched well in his return at the Cubs, 4 2/3 shutout innings, only 2 strikeouts there. The matchups for this group: Schmidt gets the Red Sox, Shane Baz gets the Phillies, Jameson Taillon in Coors Field, yuck, and Tobias Myers is at the D-backs. To be honest, don't love any of these matchups.
Yeah, like that's Tobias Myers, huge start, 11 strikeouts. It was all in the fastball, basically. It was the Rockies on the road, and now he goes to Arizona to face one of the best lineups in baseball. I've been less interested in him than I think either of you, and I can't imagine either of you are particularly interested in him at Arizona. So
having already done the exercise of looking at every team's schedules for the rest of the season, I don't remember exactly how it plays out for these 4, but none of them made the list of pitchers I was picking up to stash beyond this upcoming week. So I think if we're going to talk about them, it's in terms of scouting for next year. And I do want to point out a couple things there if I could.
Mm-hmm.
Tobias Myers, obviously this was an unusually good start for him with the 11 strikeouts and a very favorable matchup. His fastball was up 1 mile per hour and he got 10 of his 19 whiffs on it, which the fastball had been a problem pitch for him, only a 17% whiff rate overall. We've wanted him to mix in the secondaries more. So that's just something to keep an eye on if he can throw it harder and it can be more effective. The other thing is I feel like Tobias Myers is kind of faded, but it's just the opposite, actually. His last 10 starts, he has a 2.25 ERA. So the numbers have actually been getting better, not worse with him, which I also thought was interesting. We'll see how he finishes out the season. And then the other one thing I wanted to bring up was Shane Baz, who faded his slider in this one, which is supposed to be his best pitch, but he's had trouble regaining the effectiveness on it. He threw it only, let's see here. He threw it not much at all, 8%. So a lot more curveballs, a lot more changeups, and he had a really good start, 15 swinging strikes against the Orioles lineup. Seems to be trending up overall, making some changes, trying some different things, but again, not ready to start Shane Baz with a matchup at the Phillies next time.
Waiver wire pitchers part 2. Kyle Gibson was great up against the Mariners. 6 2/3 shutout innings with 9 strikeouts and 18 whiffs. Andrew Heaney turned in a quality start against the Angels. 6 innings, 3 earned runs, 8 strikeouts, had 14 whiffs in that one. Frankie Montas, an impressive start also against the Rockies on the road. 6 innings, 3 runs, 10 strikeouts, 7 starts with the Brewers. He's been solid, 3.92 ERA and a 1.21 whip. And Dean Kramer was great up against Tampa Bay, 6 shutout innings with 7 strikeouts and 17 whiffs. If we're looking at the matchups for this group, Kramer is at the Red Sox, Montas is at the Giants, Andrew Heaney at the Mariners, and Kyle Gibson is at Toronto. I think Heaney and Montas probably stand out most in terms of matchups here.
Yeah, I think they're the only ones I would want to stream here.
Heaney is among my sleeper pitchers for next week.
All right. The next group includes Jose Quintana, who pitched really well up against the Reds, 6 2/3 shutout innings with 6 strikeouts and 13 whiffs. Matthew Boyd, famous last words. Guys looked good, man. And this time he was at
the White Sox this time, too. Next up. Yeah.
I like
Dodgers. He does this against the Dodgers. What's he going to do to the White Sox? Probably give up 4 home runs.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
But he is among my sleeper pitchers.
6 innings, 1 run, 6 strikeouts, 15 whiffs for Matthew Boyd, who again is at the White Sox this week. DJ Hers threw 5 no-hit innings at the Pirates. He also had 5 strikeouts with 12 whiffs. He gets the Marlins this week. Obviously, a great matchup. And Edward Cabrera was awesome on Sunday against the Phillies. 7 shutout innings with 6 strikeouts. He had 14 whiffs, and he's at the Nationals. So a couple names here who could be in play, maybe some deeper league stuff, but Cabrera at the Nationals, Hers gets the Marlins, and then obviously we mentioned Boyd at the White Sox. I think all 3 of those could be in play.
Yeah, I think I like Boyd best, probably Hers after that. Cabrera, it's extremely Jeremy Renner in Avengers Endgame, where he's like in the rain and he like just murdered a bunch of gang members and he's like, "Don't give me hope." That's how I Cabrera. I want to believe, but my brain is too smart to let me believe it.
Chris, do you think of these scenarios beforehand, and then you're like,
off the top of the dome? This is just
that's pretty good.
You get these gems just improv'd, baby.
I really wasn't sure where you were going with there at first. Like Edward Cabrera murders what? What's going on?
Yeah. Murders your whip, more like, hey.
Well, he murdered that Phillies lineup here on Sundays.
I mean, this is the thing. Like, if he could do this consistently, he'd be awesome. But we're several years into this whole experience, and I'm not gonna buy in. No.
I mean, case in point, you probably don't even remember this, listener, but he had a similar start on August 9th where he threw 7 shutout innings. And what happened in between?
I'm not exactly sure, but I wrote down last 8 starts for Cabrera, a 3.02 ERA and a 121 WHIP. So not great, but solid.
Yeah, sometimes looking at the box score is more revelatory. I mean, looking at the game log, I should say.
I will say, like, if I had any faith in DJ Hurt's ability to pitch deep into games, like, I think he's legitimately showing some very impressive skills. And I think as a sleeper for 2025, DJ Hurts is definitely in consideration. Since the start of July, he has a 2.65 ERA and a 2.89 FIP. The problem, he's averaging fewer than 5 innings per start.
Wow.
And it's a lot of like 85, 87, 77 pitch starts. So I think there's talent here, especially if he can keep the walks under control. But I don't think he's a fine streamer against Miami, but not someone to get excited about for the rest of the season.
That could be a workload management thing, but given that he really just has a fastball, it makes me wonder if they don't trust him a third time through the lineup, which would be a longer standing issue for hers.
A bunch of names who pitched well in deeper leagues could be out there. Not going to run through the lines, but I'll mention the names: Landon Knack, Jack Leiter, Davis Martin, Samuel Aldegari, Jacob Junis, and Kyle Freeland. All 6 of those pitched well this weekend. This is very deep league stuff, but any of those names stand out?
Well, Landon Knack, I think the velocity was up on everything. Obviously got a lot of strikeouts against a good lineup. Should have a rotation spot now with Clayton Kershaw being down, and is a fly ball pitcher. So you could see him, if home runs don't get the better of him, you could see him being pretty good in terms of hit prevention. So I have some low level interest in Landon Knack. I picked him up in an NL only league.
I'm very interested in Jack Leiter. I don't know if that interest is ever going to amount to anything, but he is clearly super talented. He had 20 whiffs in this start, more than any other pitcher this weekend. 12 of them on the fastball. That pitch, when he's got it going, is massive for him. And I don't think he's that close to putting it together yet. And so it's more of a, let's see what the next couple of starts are for 2025. Although I'm not sure he's going to have a rotation spot in 2025, given DeGrom coming back, Kumar Rocker knocking on the door.
But they should just go old and young. It should be like DeGrom, Scherzer, Rocker, Leiter.
Bradford.
And Cody Bradford's awesome. And Evaldi, I think.
It's a legitimate crunch. I don't think Kumar Rocker is going to make the opening day rotation next year, but Leiter, I think, is a really interesting talent, and I would love to see him go on a run here. It's just, if you're in a 12-team points league, there's 0 chance you could start him this week, even with one of the best matchups for a strikeout pitcher at Seattle. Yeah.
I think if you're chasing strikeouts and you're just whatever, your ratios are in the dumps anyway, you could go for it. Jack Leiter at the Mariners, and maybe you get a win out of it too. So, but yeah, I could see lots of strikeouts there against the Mariners for Jack Leiter. What about, I just want to quickly mention, Justin Verlander. It's always rough to see the legends go out, but like very rarely do they end their careers like David Ortiz does, right? It's just not looking good for Verlander. You give up 8 earned runs on Sunday Night Baseball. He's 91% rostered. I think you could drop him.
It's never been more over.
Yep. I agree. Can I give a honorable mention here to a pitcher nobody's ever heard of who had a good first career start this weekend, and that is Brady Basso.
Oh, not the one I thought you were going to mention.
Of the Athletics. Okay.
Where do you think he was going? Richard Fitz?
I thought he was going Richard Fitz.
Well, Basso's start was more impressive. No earned runs in 6 innings against the Tigers. I believe that was Saturday. And the overall minor league numbers aren't great, and he's 26 years old, but last 8 starts at AAA, 2.29 ERA, 0.96 whip, 11 K per 9, and good K to BB ratio overall for Brady Basso. The problem is he got sent down right afterward.
Yeah.
So we may not hear from him again this year, but if we do, I'm going to have my eye on Brady Basso.
Mm-hmm. The only reason I didn't include him was because he got sent down.
Yeah, I guess Richard didn't fit the rundown.
No, he did not, unfortunately. Let's get into some starter sit questions for some pitchers that could be on the fringe here. Luis Gil was dominant in his return at the Cubs. He threw 6 shutout innings with 7 strikeouts. He had 15 whiffs on 89 pitches. Velocity was down quite a bit in this start, but obviously was still effective. You guys start or sit Luis Gil up against the Royals this week?
I think you got to start him.
You could go either way. It depends who else I had. I'm not eager to start Gil, but I wouldn't be afraid to if he was clearly my best option.
Okay. What about Max Fried, who was great up against the Blue Jays? 7 innings, 1 unearned run, 8 strikeouts. He had 16 whiffs. Overall, since returning from the IL, it's a 4.08 ERA and a 129 whip. He has been better lately, and he's at the Nationals this week.
Yeah. Start.
Yep. Spencer Schwellenbach has looked a little more human recently. He faced the Blue Jays this weekend where he gave up 10 hits, 6 runs. Only 3 of those were earned. He also gave up 2 homers in that game. I think both were to Spencer Horwitz. And
Spencer on Spencer crime.
Yeah. Schwellenbach gets the Dodgers this week. So
yeah, I think you're sitting.
I think I want to bench him.
I agree. And I think he might be running out of steam here. He's well over last year's inning total.
He's like 90 over last year's inning total.
And you know what? This could, for Spencer Schwellenbach believers, this could be a great thing because he was getting so much hype there before these last couple starts, and I think the hype was justified. I think there's a lot to like about Spencer Schwellenbach. This might push him outside the top 36. We'll see how he finishes out, but I think he's running out of steam here for 2024.
Dylan Cease has taken a step back lately over his last 5 starts, a 5.27 ERA, a 154 whip. Walks have been a problem. He's at the Giants this week, though, which is a good matchup.
Strikeouts have also been a problem.
Yeah.
It's not getting very many of them lately. I'm going to go down with the ship. If Dylan Cease is going to end the season poorly, it's going to be in my lineup.
Agree.
Luis Severino has pitched better as of late. His last 5 starts, a 195 ERA, a 118 whip, over a strikeout per inning. And he threw his sweeper a decent bit more in this start, and it was pretty effective. The problem is he's at the Phillies this week.
Yeah, I'm not starting him.
I'm not either, but there has been a longer-term trend of Luis Severino throwing that sweeper more. It was especially more in this start, but when we've seen the strikeouts go up, he's kind of reinventing himself again after becoming more of a ground ball pitcher earlier this year.
Michael Wacha turned in a great start up against the Twins, 7 shutout innings with 7 strikeouts, and he is only 68% started at the Pirates this week. I think we're a go on Michael
Wacha. Yeah, with the most underrated pitcher in baseball, Michael Wacha, I would say.
What about Garrett Cole, who took a tough luck loss at the Cubs on Sunday? 6 innings, 2 unearned runs, 7 strikeouts. He is still searching for that slider, but in spite of not having that pitch, his last 7 starts, a 158 ERA and a 105 whip. He is home against the Red Sox this week. What do you think about Garrett Cole?
Start.
I feel like he always gets hit hard by the Red Sox.
Yeah, no, the numbers against the Red Sox the last couple of seasons are, I only checked the last 3 seasons, but it's like close to a 7 ERA over the past 3 seasons against the Red Sox. Rafael Devers especially just owns Garrett Cole and always has.
The slider, okay? He doesn't have it anymore. He's going to be fine.
It's a good thing he doesn't have the slider, actually. No, I'm probably starting him, but I'd be lying if I said I was doing it with a ton of confidence.
18 career starts against the Red Sox for Garrett Cole, 4.84 ERA, 123 whip.
Yeah, a ton of home runs. I mean, Rafael Devers has like 9 or 10 career home runs off him. It's like something bonkers like that.
Yeah, it'll be the immovable force. I don't know this thing. Something
unstoppable force, immovable object.
There you go. That's why teamwork makes the dream work. Devers has been ice cold lately, and he's dealing with a bunch of injuries. So we'll see who comes out on top in Devers versus Garrett Cole this week. Jack Flaherty was awesome up against the Guardians. 7 1/3 shutout innings with 6 strikeouts. He had 14 whiffs on 92 pitches, and he is at the Braves this week. I think I feel okay with Jack Flaherty.
Yep.
Agree.
Okay. Shout out to some third basemen that have been awesome for a good amount of time. Mark Vientos, 3 for 5 with a double dong, 4 RBI on Friday, including a walk-off homer. He's up to a 284 batting average and an 895 OPS on the season. Manny Machado, since the start of June, has been great. 299 batting average, 20 homers, and an OPS near 900. Eugenio Suarez continues to dominate. 2 more homers this weekend, 60 games since July 1st, a 316 batting average, 20 homers, 58 RBI, and an OPS over 1,000 for
He's
Eugenio
end up with
Suarez.
100 RBI season.
Yeah.
How? That's wild.
Batting 5th or 6th in a top 3 offense, that'll do it.
I know. I get it. Almost an RBI per game for like 3 months, but
yeah,
he was dreadful early on. Yeah.
Big year for Machado next year. I'm calling it now.
I mean, he's going to end up basically having the season you expected him to have.
Well, it's going to be a season like last year's, but next year will be the first year in 3 years where he wasn't impacted by that elbow injury.
Yeah. I mean, I read off the numbers since June, but even the overall numbers for Machado, 275, 25 homers, 90 RBI, 9 steals. Like he's going to come close to 30 homers, 100 ribbies, and double-digit steals. That's basically what you want from Machado, right? I mean, that's a really, really good season for him. So, hopefully he can carry it over to next year. Some pitching standouts from the weekend. The first group, Framber Valdez, Cole Reagans, Bryce Miller, and Michael King, all big performances from those. Scott, anything that stood out from King, Bryce Miller, Reagans, and Framber Valdez?
The biggest thing that stood out for me is we've continued to tout Framber Valdez increased curveball usage. It's his last 10 starts now, 177 ERA, and that's when the curveball usage ticked up. But this latest start over the weekend was the lowest curveball usage during that stretch, 28%. He still 2-hit the Diamondbacks. But, he was a good pitcher before he added the curveball. So, I don't know, something to keep an eye on the rest of the way. Does that end up being a short-term development, a relatively short-term development, the increased curveball usage, and will he basically go back to being the Framber Valdez we remember before then?
And like the stakes are relatively low, right? Like he was always a top 24 starting pitcher. For me, it's just like he's pitched like a top 12 pitcher in this stretch. And
for sure. 177 ERA, 0.80 whip, 11 K per 9.
The underlying numbers almost entirely back it up too. He's been outstanding. It's 4 double-digit strikeout efforts, I think, in that stretch as well. It's just if he doesn't, back it up the next 4 starts and it goes back to being less than a strikeout per inning, then it's probably he's just Framber Valdez.
Next group includes Logan Gilbert. Another start, no run support, 8 innings, 2 runs, 10 strikeouts, and he took the loss.
If you want to convince your league mates, like I'm agnostic about the win in fantasy, but if you want to convince your league mates to get rid of the win, just show them Logan Gilbert's game log this season. He has, I think, 11 losses this season. Let me make sure I get the number right. He has, I think, 6 quality starts in a loss this season. And he has a 2.70 ERA in no decisions. It's bonkers. The only time he gets a win is if he's like the best pitcher in baseball right now. He has I think it's a sub 0.7 ERA in his 7 wins. It's so stupid. He had a complete game loss today. That is so dumb. Not today, Friday. Saturday.
The ratios are ridiculous. He has a 7-11 record on the season. It's just
So it's I think 6 quality starts and 11 losses or something like that. It's
sometimes baseball is just dumb.
Yeah, I think he's 3rd in innings, top 10 in ERA overall. Like he's been a fantasy ace. He's been a top 10 starting pitcher. I just don't know if it's actually reflected because he has 7 wins and 29 starts. It's so annoying.
Again, that was Logan Gilbert. Bailey Ober had an awesome start at the Royals, 7 shutout innings with 7 strikeouts. And Chris Sale continues to dominate, 6 shutout with 7 strikeouts. After his last start, I did bring up that the velocity was down, and it was down again in this one. Not as much, but fastball down 1.3 miles per hour, slider down 1.2. He still was really good in both of those starts, but this is a pitcher that has an extensive injury history. So just, I don't know. Let's watch it. See where it goes. Chris Sale velocity. Anything?
I mean, you're not going to drop him.
No, you're starting him. It's just,
yeah, I think, I mean, it hasn't appeared to limit his effectiveness. So I think he's clearly the NL Cy Young. And I think, arguably the top pitcher in baseball this year.
Do you think all 4 big singular awards are locked up already?
I do.
I do. There is a movement to try to make Francisco Lindor the NL MVP, but I don't think he's going to be that.
I think when the voting actually comes out, it's not even going to be close between those two.
Some hitting leftovers. Jose Altuve had himself a big weekend. 7 hits, 1 homer, 6 runs scored. Yordan Alvarez, a double dong, 6 RBI on Friday. And in the second half, he's batting .344 with an OPS approaching 1,100. Julio Rodriguez is picking things back up. His last 15 games, batting .295 with 3 homers, 13 runs, 11 RBI, and 3 steals. Willy Adames had another huge game on Saturday, 2 for 4 with a sock and 2 shoes. Tyler O'Neill had a big game on Saturday, 3 for 4 with a double dong. Marcus Semien, big game on Sunday, 2 for 5 with a sock and a shoe. And Shohei Ohtani just doing his thing. 2 more homers this weekend. He's now up to 46 and 46.
I mean, 50-50 is happening, right?
Yeah, we might be selling him short.
Have you guys seen the weird Willy Adames stat about the 3-run home runs?
So
I think he has more 3-run home runs than like a handful of teams do.
I didn't
this
see that,
season,
but I know he tied the record.
Yeah, I think he has
Ken Griffey Jr.
13 3-run home runs this season.
Yeah,
which is one of those. It's just weird, like. But yeah, it's tied for the most in a single season in MLB history. Willy Adames.
Yeah, I did want to ask about Tyler O'Neill. 17 games since being activated from the IL in mid-August. He's batting .195. Does have 5 homers, but a 41% strikeout rate. Would you be all right dropping Tyler O'Neill in like a 3 outfielder league? For
I think in a points league it'd be okay, but it's not like Cruz and PCA are incredible in points leagues. I think, like, depending on the matchups and the number, like the Red Sox only have 5 games this week, right?
No, they have 7.
They have okay. So then, I think I'd probably just stick with O'Neill over Cruz. But the strikeouts do make it an interesting question in a points league.
Yeah, I'd be afraid of him blowing up for somebody else. He's been a fixture in my top 30 outfielders all season, and I'm disinclined to change it at this point for Tyler O'Neill.
All right, some bullpen updates for the Yankees on Friday. Well, they got really creative. 3-run lead. Jake Cousins got the 7th inning. Tommy Canley got the 8th, and Luke Weaver got the 9th inning. He walked 1 but struck out 2 for his first save, and he's 17% rostered.
Oh my gosh!
I don't know if this means he will get their next save, but
I just thought of something. Luke Weaver's a closer now. Luke Weaver.
Oh my God!
I believe you can get me through the night.
That was the joke I used to make like 8 years ago.
That was
I
Adam
wished he was. I used to say I wish he was a closer, so we could. We could sing that version of the song.
It's happening,
and now it's happening.
Somebody needs to text Adam.
I absolutely have to get him to sing that, and I use it as a drop. Because the fact that he used to sing that and now Luke Weaver is closing for his favorite team, which I'm sure he absolutely hates, it's amazing. So
yeah,
I'll work on that. I'll work on getting that from Adam. For the Rockies,
we don't actually know he's the closer, to be fair, but he got the first save since they demoted Clay Holmes, and he was the 8th inning guy. So it's looking pretty strong, I'd say.
Pretty annoying we didn't get a second save this weekend.
Yeah.
And they had a save opportunity Saturday. They just let Nestor Cortez throw the final 4 innings of the game.
Yeah.
which apparently he was not happy about.
Yeah, we didn't mention that, but he was removed from the rotation.
I think he's
only
gonna
for one start. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's just temporary. And along those lines, I wanted to make sure I brought this up because we talked Friday about how Spencer Arrighetti might be a 2-star pitcher for the upcoming week. But it sounds like they're reinserting Ronel Blanco, despite however many balls you see next to Arrighetti's name in your set lineup page. It sounds like they're going to reinsert Ronel Blanco and go 6-man next week. So just 1 start for Arrighetti against the Athletics. I still think you're going to use him in most cases, but it's obviously the rewards are not as big if he's just a 1-start guy, obviously. And also along those lines, because I also mentioned him among sleeper pitchers for last week, for the upcoming week, Osvaldo Bido, he worked 2 innings in relief Saturday, but it sounds like he's going to be back in the rotation this week. We just don't know when. I presume it'll be the second half of the week, which would line Osvaldo Bido up against the White Sox, which means I still have him among my sleeper pitchers.
I think I saw that he's going to pitch on Tuesday.
I saw some sites they filled him in for Tuesday, but I have not seen it reported that Osvaldo Bido is starting Tuesday.
So this is just the latest news item on CBS for Bido. It says is scheduled to start Tuesday against the Astros. That's according to Matt Kawahara of the Houston Chronicle.
All right. Well, then that sounds like reporting. So I will even better then if Bido is going to line up for 2 starts.
For the Rockies, Tyler Kinley picked up a save on both Friday and Sunday, but as we mentioned earlier, Victor Vodnik, he was activated from the IL on Sunday. He didn't pitch in that game. I wonder if maybe they kind of work him in slowly, but my guess is he will once again take over as the team's closer. For the Orioles on Friday, Sir Anthony Dominguez recorded the final 4 outs for his 9th save. He is 48% rostered. For the Tigers on Saturday, Jason Foley recorded the final 2 outs for his 21st save. For the Royals on Saturday, Lucas Ursig struck out 1 for his 10th, and then on Sunday, he picked up his 11th as well. And all of a sudden, Lucas Ursig has 3 saves since Wednesday. So he was kind of shaky there for a little bit. He injured his hand, but looks like he's right back in the closer mix. For the Pirates, game 2 of their doubleheader on Saturday, Aroldis Chapman got the 9th inning with a 2-run lead. He gave up 4 runs on a walk and 4 hits. He took his 5th blown save and 5th loss.
Are we discovering why the Pirates were maybe a little reticent to give Chapman the role?
Yeah, this is the Aroldis Chapman experience. For the Rays on Sunday, Edwin Uceta recorded the final 5 outs, 4 via strikeout for his 2nd save. I think it's pretty clear that he's better than Manuel Rodriguez. I just don't really trust the Rays.
Yeah, I don't either. And I agree that he's better, Uceta, than Manuel Rodriguez. I think I'd rather have Rodriguez of the 2 still, but not by a lot.
For the Blue Jays on Sunday, Chad Green got the 9th inning with a 1-run lead. He gave up a run on 2 hits. He took his 3rd blown save. All 3 blown saves have been in his last 3 outings. And for the Cubs on Sunday, Porter Hodge walked 1, but also struck out 1 for his 4th save, and he is 30% rostered. Let's rank some names that are on this list. Sir Anthony Dominguez, Ursig, and Porter Hodge. How do you guys rank those? Dominguez, Hodge, and Ursig.
I'd go Ursig, Dominguez, Hodge. Sounds like Scott was going to say Hodge first.
I was. Hodge, Ursig, and Dominguez. Dominguez to me is a distant 3rd.
Okay. To stream or not to stream on Monday. Anybody interesting here? What do we have? David Festa against the Angels. Reed Detmers is at the Twins.
I think those are the 2 most interesting by far. I'm not sure how much I trust them. Detmer is obviously very good in his most recent start and reworked the slider down in AAA and was terrible at AAA, but the last 3 starts were really good, and then this one was really good. So would not surprise me if we got another good Reed Detmers run here.
Yeah, Festa's my favorite for Monday against the Angels, but I think Paul Blackburn in his return at Toronto, and Nick Martinez at Atlanta. If you're really having to stretch, those 2 might be okay.
You like them more than Detmers?
I mean, Detmers is the higher upside play, but I tend to think in terms of high floor for this daily streamer segment. I don't know why. I just it's kind of a do no harm mentality. And Detmers, I feel like, could do a lot of harm. The Twins mash lefties pretty well, and I'm just not sure I'm totally there yet with him.
To stream or not to stream on Tuesday, we have Aaron Savali at the Giants, JP Sears at the Astros, Rhett Lauder is at the Cardinals, David Peterson is at the Blue Jays, Mackenzie Gore gets the Braves, and Taj Bradley is at the Phillies.
I think Mackenzie Gore probably shouldn't be in the streamers section anymore. I don't know if there are enough active leagues that he'll get out of it before the end of the season, but last, 3 starts have been really, really good for him. 3 straight quality starts. The velocity's back. Seems to have figured out the mechanical issues that were plaguing him. I feel pretty good about him moving forward. 2-start week this week. I'm starting Mackenzie Gore.
Yep. He's the headliner for sleeper pitchers. So, I like him for the first start against the Braves. Even more the second start against the Marlins.
Yes.
I think Peterson at the Blue Jays is probably fine as well.
Yeah, he's kind of doing a Sean Manaea thing where last start especially, 20 swinging strikes on his fastball or 17 swinging strikes on his fastball.
Watching Chris Sale too? What the heck?
I don't know what was happening there. It was his birthday, so maybe he was just hyped. But yeah, I think he had 20 swinging strikes between his four-seamer and sinker in his last start, which has never been what David Peterson does well. So yeah, he's probably second on the list, I guess.
All right, we are going to wrap there for Scott and Chris. I am Frank. Thanks as always for tuning in to Fantasy Baseball today. Please make sure to follow and leave a 5-star rating on Apple or Spotify. And we will be back again tomorrow. Bye-bye.